All right, we're jumping right into a pretty wild theory today. It's about a war that, according to the source we're looking at, didn't start with bombs or soldiers. Nope. It started with a sudden, massive financial crash. A silent battle that could be reshaping our world right now. Take a good, long look at this number. $6 trillion. That is the absolutely staggering amount of value that the source material claims just vanished from the global market. Poof. And here's the real kicker. It all happened in about the time it takes to order a pizza. 30 minutes. An almost unbelievable amount of wealth just gone. The main question here is, how in the world is that even possible? You see, what makes this whole thing so baffling, according to the source, is just how sudden it was. This wasn't some slow-motion train wreck or a predictable dip in the market. This was a sheer vertical drop across the board that left everyone just staring at their screens asking, what on earth just happened? The very first domino to fall was gold. You know, the one asset that's supposed to be your ultimate safe harbor when things get crazy. It had literally just hit an all-time high, and then, with zero warning, it just fell off a cliff. And right on its heels, silver did the exact same thing. This collapse wasn't isolated to just one thing. It was like a virus, and it was spreading fast. And we're not just talking about precious metals. The source describes this as a worldwide contagion. From the NASDAQ to stock markets all across the globe, everything just started flashing bright red. It was a total coordinated nosedive. So, and this is the crucial point, there wasn't a single piece of bad news, no catastrophic event that could explain this sudden worldwide panic. The source really emphasizes this. Everyone was completely stunned, which only makes the whole thing more mysterious. What invisible hand could possibly trigger a crash of this size? Okay, so if there was no obvious trigger, what's the explanation? Well, our source points to the shadow of a looming war, a potential conflict with Iran that had the entire world holding its breath. Now, this slide basically lays out the standard investor playbook when a major war seems likely. You'd expect stocks and property values to absolutely tank, the dollar's value becomes a huge question mark, and of course, critical oil supplies could be cut off. This fear was driving everybody's decisions. And in that exact scenario, all that fear and uncertainty, there's really only one place people traditionally run to: gold. The source explains that everyone, from huge investment firms to regular people selling their houses, was piling into gold to stay safe. So, why on earth did it crash? This is where the story shifts from a weird market event to something more like a geopolitical thriller. The claim is, this wasn't just random panic. It was a plan, a calculated move in a very high-stakes game between some incredibly powerful global players. The first player on the board, according to the source, is China. They're described as being on a massive gold-buying spree. And this fits into a bigger strategy you might have heard of, de-dollarization, where the goal is to back their own currency with gold and challenge the US dollar's dominance. Player 2 then is the United States, and they're basically forced to play defense here. With other countries selling off US bonds and a major war looming, the US, the source alleges, had to do something to protect its most powerful asset, the dollar, from getting devalued on the world stage. And then there's player number 3, what our source calls the hidden powers. Think huge institutional investors or insiders with deep knowledge. The theory here is that they knew this crash was coming, so they sold at the absolute top. And now they're just waiting in the wings to buy everything back up for pennies on the dollar. So let's connect all these dots. The central argument from the source is that this potential military conflict, it's all a smokescreen. The real war has already started, and it's being fought over the future of money itself. That crash, that was the opening shot. This really breaks down the two fronts of this conflict. On one side, you have the visible threat of war in Iran, fought with tanks and soldiers. But on the other, there's a hidden war being waged with algorithms and market trades, and the goal there isn't territory, it's total global economic control. So how was it actually done? Well, the source lays out this 4-step playbook. First, you let fear drive the price of gold through the roof. Second, the big players suddenly dump everything they have, causing an instant crash. Third, this triggers a massive wave of panic selling from all the smaller investors, trying to cut their losses. And finally, the same people who started the fire swoop back in and buy everything back at a huge discount. This quote really just sums up the whole perspective perfectly. The $6 trillion crash wasn't some accident. It was a deliberate, strategic financial attack, a first shot fired in a currency war to defend the US dollar. So, if this interpretation is actually correct, the fallout from all this could be enormous. And we're not just talking about numbers on a screen. The source warns this could be the beginning of some serious global instability, with real tangible consequences for all of us. One of the biggest consequences of a military conflict in the Gulf would be a massive spike in oil prices. Our source suggests prices could easily surge to $100, maybe even $200 a barrel. A shockwave like that would ripple through the entire global economy, affecting the cost of, well, everything, from the gas in your car to the food on your table. And that oil shock would just be the beginning. It could kick off runaway inflation, making everyday life way more expensive. It could ground airlines as fuel costs bankrupt airlines. And according to the source, all this escalating financial uncertainty could cascade until the entire interconnected global system is at risk of a complete, catastrophic failure. And all of this leaves us with a final, pretty sobering thought. When markets themselves can be turned into weapons and trillions of dollars can be erased in just minutes, it really forces us to ask, in a war that's fought with money, is anyone, anywhere truly safe?